everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Sixth and I. My name is Jackie Leventhal, and I'm the Director of Cultural Programming here. We always like to begin by asking, by show of hands, for how many of you is this your first time at Sixth and I? So a good number of you. I'll tell you briefly about the history of Sixth and I so you understand about the significance of where you are today. The building opened in 1908, and it was home to a synagogue for about 45 years. And then when they relocated, the building became home to Turner Memorial AME Church. When they decided to relocate, the building was put up for sale, and the highest bid was from someone who wanted to buy it and turn it into a nightclub. So thankfully that did not happen, and the building was saved within 24 hours, and it was turned into a non-denominational, non-membership, and non-traditional synagogue, and also a center for arts and culture to host events like this one here tonight. Now we have a great lineup of authors, including tonight, stopping here on their book tours this season. Next weekend will be Giada De Laurentiis for a new cookbook. A.J. Jacobs is coming, Madeleine Albright, Frank DeFord, and John Irving, among others. We're so happy to have Jonathan Haidt here tonight, and I want to begin by congratulating him on the release of The Righteous Mind: Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion. Now, I think it's always fitting to have an author speak about politics here, given that we're in D.C., and I'd say in the same vein for an author speaking about religion here, because we're in a synagogue. So given that tonight is a combination of the two, I feel like we hit the bullseye in having you here. The Righteous Mind is getting great reviews from liberals, conservatives, libertarians, and nonpartisans alike. You can also see the book reviewed in the New York Times this coming weekend. Jonathan is a professor of psychology at UVA and a visiting professor at the NYU Stern School of Business. He's often mentioned in David Brooks' New York Times column, and you've probably heard him on NPR talking about his studies in moral psychology. Jonathan is also a popular speaker at the TED Talks. I was watching a video yesterday that had over 1 million views, so it's nice that we get to have you in an intimate setting here tonight. His research focuses on morality. By understanding more about our moral roots, Jonathan's hope is that we can learn to be civil and open-minded. He began his career studying negative moral emotions, but then moved on to the understudied positive moral emotions like admiration, awe, and moral elevation. This move got Jonathan involved with positive psychology and led him to write his first book, The Happiness Hypothesis: Finding Modern Truth in Ancient Wisdom. So I will invite him up here in just a moment. There will be time for Q&A toward the end of Jonathan's talk, and for that we ask that you please come to the microphone in the center of the room because we are filming tonight. And following the program, we will have a book signing in that corner, so we just ask that you line up along the back wall. That is it for me. If you can please join me in welcoming Jonathan Haidt to Sixth and I.
Thanks so much, Jackie, and thank you all for coming out tonight. So as Jackie mentioned, my book, it just came out last week, and the cover was designed by Stefan Sagmeister, a graphic designer in New York, and I'm thrilled with it. The original version of it actually was supposed to be a literal cut, a slit in the book. And at the last minute, 3 weeks before going to press, the sales team at Pantheon said, "We can't do that. It's going to rip on some people, and then Amazon will stop selling it." So we had all right, what you have is an optical illusion. But anyway, I love it because it captures what it feels like to be an American these days. It feels like something is torn, something is ripped, something is wrong. And we have to somehow fix this, put it back together. The book comes out in 1 week in the UK, and I think the UK cover also perfectly captures what it feels like to be an American. So yeah, I mean, it could work just as well, and for a while I thought it's funnier, so I wanted it, but sometimes as I'm walking around with it, and I don't want to be, I'm glad it's in the UK and not here. Anyway. So I'm just going to give you a very brief overview of the book tonight, and then I'll draw out a few implications for policy and politics. How many of you are involved in a fairly direct way in politics or anything about policy? Please raise your hands. Okay, wow, about, I'd say about 30 to 40% of you. And how many of you have some at least general vague interest in politics or policy? Raise your hand. Okay, so, all right. Well, it's good that you're interested in policy because we are about to face the largest policy challenge in our history. I don't know if you saw the news this afternoon. I've been tracking this story for a few weeks. Astronomers at Arizona State University, who they track the asteroids that cross the Earth's orbit, and today at 4 o'clock they went public with the main one that they've been tracking. It's an asteroid. It's about 85 miles across, much larger than one that did in the dinosaurs, and it is scheduled to cross Earth orbit and actually hit the Earth on April 24th, 2022. Now, they estimate that there's a 90% chance of impact, and it will not destroy all life. They expect that we'll be able to have breeding populations of humans, probably a couple thousand people on every continent, underground, for a couple of years, because this is what it's going to look like. This is what they estimate the impact would look like. Then after a few years, the humans will be able to come up above ground, and this is what they estimate that it will look like when people emerge from their holes in the ground. Now, there is one hope. The scientists say that if we embark on a crash course right now, don't delay, we can build a fleet of new heavy lift rockets using new technologies. We can create a new kind of space bomb, nuclear bombs that will blow up in space in direct force. If we create 200 of these rockets, launch the nuclear weapons in space, and if we can get them out beyond the orbit of Jupiter and blow them all up at the same time, right next to the asteroid, we can deflect it by 1/10 of a degree, and that's all we need to make it miss the Earth. But they say that if we don't get started, if we wait a year, then it's going to increase the cost, and the odds of success are going to drop about by 20 or 30%. So what I've just given you is actually a very easy public policy problem. It's huge in size, but it's actually a very easy problem to solve because, just by the way, I made up the part about the asteroid. If you're still worried, don't worry, it's not. Okay. No, I gave a version of this talk yesterday, and people in the audience said other people were like checking their phones, like, is this real? Is this? Oh my God! I think actually they were calling their brokers, like, sell. Buy drilling equipment and nuclear bomb stocks. Anyway, so this is an easy problem because basically it's a technical problem where we just have to know, if we know the odds and the costs, we can work on it. And it's actually even easier than that because from a psychological perspective, it's a public policy problem that solves itself. If there really was going to be an asteroid hitting the Earth, wiping out almost all of us, we would all pull together as a team. All the nations would chip in, left, right, and center. Everybody would be behind this, and we'd get the problem solved. So that would be a very easy public policy problem. Now, I'm going to give you two harder problems because there really are two asteroids headed for the Earth. And by really, I mean metaphorically, not really. But metaphorically, there are two asteroids headed for the Earth, and these asteroids don't unite us, they divide us. Each side of the political spectrum sees one and recognizes the danger, and the other side is blind to it. So the first, as you might have guessed, is global warming. I gave a talk at TED 2 weeks ago, and we were treated to a number of doom and gloom talks. Jim Hansen, the NASA scientist who published one of the first papers in 1981, predicting as CO2 is rising, here's what might happen. And history seems to have borne him out fairly well. He's the scientist who was, his words were edited heavily by the Bush administration, leading him to object and to really go off and become somebody who's really sounding the alarm. So what Hansen told us is, he showed us, you've all seen versions of this graph. This is the rise in CO2 that's predicted based on various scenarios. The top line being if we do nothing, and the very bottom line is if we could stop the growth of CO2 right now at this level, then that's where things would be. But the expectation, given that the Earth's track record at doing something about this is pretty, well, not zero, but pretty close. So we're probably looking at somewhere near the top lines. And if that happens, scientists are estimating a 5-meter rise in sea level. Actually, wait, let me read this quote from Hansen. This is what he said to us. He said, so first he told us about the feedback loops that happen. So as CO2 goes up, temperature goes up, ice caps melt. Then as they melt, there's less white surface and more dark water to absorb more light. So you get these intensifying feedback loops. So Actually, what he said was that the IPCC the official prediction is for a 1 meter sea rise by the end of the century, but he actually thinks it'll be 5 if you take into account all the sea level, all the feedback loops. So if we get a 5 meter sea rise, this is an artist's conception of what Florida would look like. Basically, all of the parts where people live would be underwater, and everybody would have to go onto